My honest thoughts on every Premier League club this season. What do I think about the club? How do I think they've done this season? What players have been good? What players maybe need to improve? What areas of the club need to improve? And more. Well, look, it's the international break. I don't know why we have so many international breaks, third one already, and we're only 11 games into the season. But I thought this would be the perfect time to do a video I probably did about a year ago where I just give my honest opinion on every club. So please do that like button. Of course, subscribe down below if you're new. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to go from 20th all the way down the table, as you can see here, to first place and give you my thoughts on each team. I'm going to try and get through these first 10 very, very quickly so this video does not drag on. But let's dive into it. So what are my honest thoughts on Southampton? Being brutally honest, they're not very good. They're not very good. I didn't expect them to stay up. I think they will go down. I like Tyler Dibling. He's a very good young talent on the wing. Exciting. Could see him going and moving to a Premier League side. Generally think they're going to finish rock bottom in 20th place. They can't score goals. I mean, Man United, I'm a Man United fan. We were crap under Eric Ten Hag and we beat these lot 3-0. Okay, like that's the only team better than Ten Hag where I was like, yeah, they're worse than us. Honestly, I don't think they invested enough in the summer and in the right positions, to be honest. And I just think it's not really Southampton's fault. If you want my brutally honest opinion, I just think the gap between the Premier League and the Championship is massive. You look at mid-table Premier League teams, you look at Fulham, you look at Brentford, you look at Bournemouth, you look at their squads and some of the talent they have in their squads. That is, unbelievable. Like the mid-table teams in the Premier League, I think, are the strongest and best they've ever been when you look at the quality in the squads. The teams like Wolves that have some really good players, Cunha, fantastic baller, Ait-Nouri, they're teams that are going to struggle to stay up because just the quality of the teams above them. Fulham, Brentford, Bournemouth, Brighton, Villa, Newcastle, West Ham, look at their team. They're doing really bad at the moment. So I think, to be fair to Southampton, they're not going to stay up because the quality of the Premier League is insane. And you need like an absolutely insane manager or an absolutely insane window and a load of money to stay up. I think they're just not good enough. Wolves, I do think will stay up. And the reason I think Wolves are going to stay up is I think they've been a bit unlucky. I watched them play versus Liverpool. They gave Liverpool a tough game. I watched them play versus Man City. I tell you what, Man City were very lucky and got a lucky VAR that Wolves didn't get a point. They did well versus Crystal Palace. They bottle it and make it 2-2. Other than the Chelsea game, they've not been battered. Every game I've watched Wolves, and my stepdad's a Wolves fan, so I do watch a bit of Wolves. Every time I've watched Wolves, they're actually in the game. It's not like they're getting rolled over like you've seen happen to Southampton and Leicester. They're in the game. I think they'll just stay up. I think it's going to be tight. I do think Gary O'Neill's a good manager. They need to improve defensively. I think losing Kilman, losing sort of big figures in defence, they need to improve defensively. I think they can score goals. I think they're all right. They've got some good players. Obviously, Cunha's a player I'm a massive fan of. João Gomez is a good player. Lamina, Ait-Nouri. They've got some good players there, but I do think defensively they need to improve. And they're just dropping silly points. And they've also probably been the most hard done by VAR out of all the sides. 18th Crystal Palace. I think this was the shock of the season, considering what Glasner did the back end of last season. Crystal Palace have been bad. They gave like Man United, Chelsea difficult games. Don't think it was totally easy for Liverpool when they played Palace. And they're quite good at shutting down shop, and they can be all right, but they've just not been the levels they were the back end of last season. They lost Anderson, they lost Elise. That's massive losses in itself. I think Anderson is one of the most underrated players in Premier League history. I actually did a video the back end of last season before he moved to Fulham to name the most underrated player, and I said Anderson's probably the most underrated defender because we talk a lot about Gay, but I've always thought Anderson was just as good. 3 goals for Mateta and only 1 goal for Eze this season. Eze's not stepped up. I think losing key players and not having Eze step up and Mateta's not getting the goals, it's just impacting them. I think Chalobah, I really like Chalobah. I like Gay. I think they've got some good players there. Adam Wharton, not been great, but he's clearly dealing with an injury and, got to be patient on the young lad. I think there is a good player there. Going into 17th, Ipswich, and they only got their first win the other day thanks to Tottenham. What is it about Tottenham? They beat City. They lose to Ipswich and they lose to, they're robbing it. They give points to the lower down teams and they take points off the top teams. But I do think Ipswich have been playing a bit better than their points tally suggests. I thought they were unlucky not to beat Villa. I thought Ipswich were the better team when they beat Villa. And unlike the other promoted sides, Southampton's struggling to score goals. Leicester are okay at scoring goals. But Ipswich are that promoted side that know how to score. Their problem is they just need to improve defensively. I think they know how to score. They know how to score goals, which is quite rare for for a promoted side. They know how to attack. They play some good football. They play some exciting football to watch. And I think McKenna's doing a fantastic job. But if you look at the quality of their squad, a lot of their players that are playing week in, week out are players that McKenna inherited from League One and has taken up to the Premier League. That's a 2-league jump, not a 1-league jump, because they've gone up one season after another season. I think what McKenna's done is incredible because he's taken players up 2 whole leagues, which is just crazy to actually think about. And some of those League One players play for him now and important members of him now. I think they did spend a lot of money. They spent more. They needed to spend money. I think they could just stay up because I actually do think they play some good stuff and some good football. They do just need to improve defensively. But you saw the first 45 minutes versus Liverpool. They made it tough for Liverpool. There is a team there. They are a goal threat. I think they're doing really well. Everton. Now, Everton started the season with 3 or 4 losses on the bounce, 4-0 defeats. It was a mess at the start of the season, but they've responded and looked a lot better lately. But I still think they could get relegated. And the reason I think they could get relegated is I look at all the teams. I look at every single team's best starting 11 outside the 3 that got promoted last season. And I think Everton's is the weakest. I generally do. And I think Sean Dyche is a good manager. And I actually look at Everton's squad and think Sean Dyche just keeping Everton up isn't a bad job because I just don't think their squad is particularly great. I think Brentford is a fantastic player. They clearly missed him in the opening games. I think his return will help them. But I wouldn't like to be an Everton fan because I think, you had players like Lookman and Moise Keane who have now gone elsewhere and they keep scoring. And then Dominic Calvert-Lewin isn't at it. McNeil's probably your biggest attacking threat, but you don't look the best going forward. You have been vulnerable defensively, but Brentford coming back will improve that. I do think you've looked better in recent games, and I do think Ndai has impressed me if I've said his name right. But yeah, just don't know about Everton. Leicester, I think they'll go down. They're in 15th now. They'll probably be happy with that. I think they will go down. I look at the squad options. I think they're poor overall. I look at their squad on paper. I think it's the second worst after Ipswich. So if they stay up, fair play to Steve Cooper. I mean, again, putting the Man United reference in there, but we beat them 3-0 the other day and we didn't even get out of first gear. There was no intensity. It just felt easy for us. And we should be beating Leicester comfortably. But considering how we've been playing and the fact that I didn't think we played that well when we beat Leicester 3-0, there's a big quality gap there. I think many of the players do have Premier League experience, which will give them an advantage over Ipswich and Southampton out the promoted sides. A lot of the players have played in the Premier League before, and maybe that's, in those 5 moments of games when it comes to just hanging on to that lead, that experience is going to help, or finding that winning goal, that experience is going to help. I think their squad probably says they'll go down, but if they stay up, props to Steve Cooper. West Ham. I think West Ham, bar Man United, have been the biggest disappointment this season. I think considering how they invested and the hype around the transfer window, they've been poor. Now, I think they had a good transfer window, but I don't think it was as good as the hype. I did think Fulkrugger had a few question marks around that. I think, they went for quite obvious names, and sometimes that's not always the way to go. I think Lopetegui could be the next to be sacked. I think the football he's playing is poor. It's not that good to watch. I think West Ham fans are now really appreciating David Moyes a lot more than they first did. Kudus, absolutely outstanding player. If I could sign anyone from West Ham as a United fan, it would be Kudus. I think he's unbelievable. I think he can move to a top 6 club. I think he would work at Tottenham. I think he'd work really well at Arsenal. I think he'd be unbelievable at Liverpool. I think he'd work at City. I think he'd work at United. I think he'd work at, Chelsea, maybe less because they've got a lot of right footers, but he'd probably let them out of Eke. But I think Kudus is unreal. I think Somerville, I'd like to see more. I think there's an exciting talent there. Bowen, obviously, good player. Paquetá's been all right. Yeah, I just think West Ham looked poor. Even when they beat United 2-1, that was due to the most shocking penalty decision ever. Man United, this was the game that got 10 off at. We could have been 4-0 up against West Ham at half time. We were just missing sitter after sitter after sitter. I've watched Man United under 10 and it was so crap this season. And to see us just rolling over West Ham, I said West Ham must be really crap because we are all over them and we still lost the game, so it doesn't really matter. West Ham got the win. But when I've watched West Ham, they've been nowhere near Forest. They've been nowhere near Chelsea. Yeah, they've been nowhere near. Talking of my embarrassing club, although not embarrassing because you know what? Amorim is here, 4 games unbeaten. Bruno Fernandes is back to playing well. Hopefully a couple of signings. I actually feel really positive about Man United now. Maybe I'm over positive, I do. But I'm depressed when I realised when I was making this list, I was like, all right, West Ham 14th, right, who's 13th? I look at the league. It's my club that's 13th. That made me really depressed when I made this video. And if you're wondering why I'm speaking fast, I don't want this video to be like an hour long. Amorim's exciting, but it's going to take time. Amorim demands intensity from the United players. He wants to play an intense style of football. What do United not bring? Intensity. We did well versus Leicester. We lack the intensity. We lack the legs. We lack the running. Man United, if it's going to work under Amorim, Ineos have to get recruitment spot on. He needs athletes. That's what we lack in the squad. Athletes. You look at Newcastle. Yeah, there can be some technical limitations at the Newcastle squad, but they're all athletes. They all run. And that's why Newcastle always gives City always give Arsenal a really difficult game because they can outrun them. That's what United need, athletes. That's how Amarin Sporting beat City, athletes. That's what United lack. So that's why I think it's going to take time. Thank you very much to Ruud van Nistelrooy for making us 4 games unbeaten and restoring some confidence. I think scoring goals has been our biggest issue. No team has underperformed XG more than us. We've. I don't know if it's a confidence thing. I don't know if it's because they don't like Ten Hag. We just were not finishing chances. We have been a lot more clinical under Ruud van Nistelrooy. Bruno's finally scoring goals like he used to. I think, players like Rashford and Højlund, we need to see a bit more of them. Højlund obviously been injured and starved of service, but our biggest issue has been scoring goals and not being totally clinical, although one of our best attackers, Amad Diallo, Ten Hag made hold the bench for 2 months. Mazraoui been unbelievable. Mazraoui has been one of the Premier League signings of the season, top 5 for sure. I mean, £12 million for this guy that can play left back, right back, in midfield. He can invert, he can underlap, he's so technically good. Mazraoui, I'm telling you this now, amazing. There's not many Man United players that have been good this season, but Mazraoui has been unbelievable. I think De Ligt, Onana and Mazraoui have all had good seasons. I think Garnacho has shown a lot of promise this season, more goal contributions than Mbappe already with 11 goal contributions. I think he's getting way too much criticism. I think people are massively overreacting. He has limitations. His decision-making could improve, but he's a 20-year-old kid. Casemiro, but if you take the Liverpool game out of the equation, which is, a big if, because that game was so horrendous in itself, Casemiro's had a good season for us. If you take the Liverpool game, and Ugarte, if you take the Tottenham game out of the equation, he's had a good season for us. Every game with Ugarte is getting better. We had 4 games with Casemiro and Ugarte in the pivot under Ruud van Nistelrooy. It worked really well. We need more intensity from the players. Amad Diallo, love him. I think Rashford and Højlund have a lot more to bring this season. I think they'll get goals if Amarin can get the best out of them. Lenny Yoro, excited for his return. Xerxes, I want to see a bit more of him, but I think there's a good player there. We're just not utilising him properly. But Mazraoui's probably been my standout for United this season. Going into Bournemouth. Now, I did Premier League predictions video and I did put Bournemouth quite high. And I said Bournemouth, one of those teams that I think will surprise you. I saw people predicting Bournemouth like 16th, 17th, and I said, but they've got a squad that could break into the top 10, and I stick with that. Bournemouth have invested in the last 3 years, I think like the 5th most amount of money in the league. I'd have to double check that. I probably should have double checked that before this video. They've spent a lot of money. Kirkers has been very impressive at left back for them, had a very good game versus City. He has been linked to some top clubs. Højlund, obviously the young centre-back from Juventus, could be one to watch in the future, not played loads yet. They lost Solanke, that was a big loss, and I think they're doing well. But I'm not shocked at where Bournemouth are. They've got a good manager, they've got good players, they've got a good squad, they play some exciting football. I'm not shocked where Bournemouth are at all. They like to attack, they like to score goals. If I'm a Bournemouth fan, I'm happy with that. And Semenyo, yeah, I like him. He's an athlete. He's a guy that likes to get forward, makes things happen. I think some top clubs will be looking at him. 11th, Brentford. Now, Thomas Frank, I think, is one of the most underrated managers in football. I said I'd rather have Thomas Frank than De Zerbi at United, which a lot of people disagreed with me at. Not that I wanted Thomas Frank or De Zerbi. I'm quite happy with Amarin. But when we were talking about managers, I said I like Thomas Frank. I think he's incredibly underrated. Now, Brentford, every game, it feels like they score 3, but they also concede 3. It feels like every Brentford game has about 6 goals in it, and Brentford have scored at least 3 of them. They don't seem to miss Ivan Toney. The attack is on fire. Whistler's good, but I think Mbeumo, he's just the baller, Mbeumo, isn't he? Massive fan of Mbeumo. And do you know what's crazy about Mbeumo is if you look at his stats per 90 this season, last season, and the season before, this is 3 consistent seasons of insane stats per 90 in the league. I made a video in the summer saying that Newcastle should sign Mbeumo. I said it makes a lot of sense. Can play striker, so could cover Isak if need be, but can play right wing. I think Gordon and Barnes are both better on the left. I think Murphy, while he can be good, there's improvement needed there. I think Mbeumo's a baller. I'm surprised no top club really went for him in the summer. I'm surprised Newcastle didn't massively go for him. I don't think Bournemouth are the best defensively, but they seem to know their strengths is attacking, so they seem to attack and think we'll just outscore the opponents because we're not going to keep a clean sheet. Seems to be where Brentford's at, but it's also crazy that they scored in the first 2 minutes for 4 games in a row. It's a good team going forward. I think Thomas Frank is doing a good job. Now we're going to talk about Tottenham. I think Tottenham are good. I know they weren't great in the game against Ipswich. I didn't watch much of it because the Man United game. I didn't watch much of the Galatasaray game or the Ipswich game because obviously I was doing watch-alongs for Man United on my main channel. But I think, and I didn't actually see the Palace game to be honest, but apparently they were poor in the Palace game. But I don't think Tottenham are bad. Maybe it's because I've not watched the Palace game and I didn't watch a lot of the Ipswich game. But I actually think Tottenham will have a good season and stick by it. I think people are forgetting that it's going to be up and down at Tottenham this season. It's going to be up and down, But as long as if it's going up and down, but you're still gradually going up while you're going up and down, that's what you see in the second season. I think Ange needs trust. I think he needs time. He needs patience. I think people don't realise this isn't he's going to do the job in a second season. It's going to be perfect. He's going to need time. He's going to need a bit of investment in defence, because I actually think that, a lot of what Tottenham are conceding are just silly defensive errors that are coming from maybe certain players at the back not being good enough. I think that Van der Ven and Romero is a fantastic partnership. But I think they have looked a bit susceptible defensively. I think Pedro Porro has been nowhere near his best this season. I think, they looked a bit shaky. I think they would have to look a fullback. But I generally think that Tottenham going forward have been quite good. I think on the eye, they've been the third best team in the league. On the eye. The problem is with Tottenham is they'll be the third best team on the eye for 75% of the games I watch them, but then the other 25%, they play like a relegation side. I don't think Tottenham will have a bad season. I think 2 losses in a row is a bit of negativity around Tottenham, but I'm generally saying this as a Man United fan. I think Ange will finish 5th or 4th. I think Chelsea 4th, Tottenham 5th. I think that he's going to close the gap. You've got to remember that Tottenham are just, 1 point off the top 5? Had Tottenham actually won their last game, they'd have been within that top 3 or something, wouldn't they? Had they beat Ipswich, which they probably should have done. But you've got to remember that Tottenham are very close to the top 4. All it takes is them getting a win and rivals dropping points, and then we're saying, Tottenham are in 4th, Tottenham are in 3rd. I think Tottenham are very, there's not much between the teams in 13th and 3rd. It's just 4 points between them. So you've got to remember that. I think it's very hard to completely make conclusions in teams from 13th to 3rd, because they're all a few points within each other, and in a couple of weeks the table could completely switch itself around. But I do think that Tottenham have been better. I think they're inconsistent, but you'd expect that in this stage of a rebuild. But I think they've been better, and I think I see progress, and I think generally they're on the right track. I think Benson has impressed me at times, Sarr's impressed me at times, but there's a bit of inconsistency there. I want to see more of Maddison. Mikey Moore has been a really exciting talent. Kulusevski's been the best player, and people keep writing off Solanke as a flop, but I actually really like what I see from Solanke, and I'd say trust the process. Aston Villa, I don't think have looked that great. Now, Aston Villa are in 9th place, and if I look at their games against Tottenham, I look at their games against Liverpool, I look at their games against all of the big sides, not been good enough. They were very lucky to get a result versus Ipswich. Ipswich were all over them. I think the investment they have, the squad they had, where they finished last season, they haven't been as good. I don't think they've been bad. They've still been a good side. They're still a lot better than my Man United. I think Sane, Xhaka, Nana have been excellent. I think Tielemans has been really good this season. I'm going to be honest, Watkins hasn't looked as good this season. Rodgers I really like. Duran coming off the bench I like. I think Villa have a good squad, but I think they'll finish 7th. I think it'll be the impacts of having games in Europe. Maybe they overperformed a little last season. I generally do think if you look at the underlying numbers, Newcastle and Chelsea had better underlying numbers than Villa, but Villa finished above them. They did probably overperform a little bit last year. They might have more games this season. I think Villa are a good side. I think they'll do well, but I don't think they're going to finish in the top 4 again this season. I don't think they'll be in the Champions League again next season. Maybe I'm wrong. I know Villa fans aren't going to be happy with that, but I think when I've watched Tottenham, they've looked better than Villa. Generally. Going into 8th is Newcastle United. They started the season quite well. I mean, I wouldn't even say they were playing that well at the start of the season, but they were getting points and you were saying fair play to them. But then they had a rough patch where I think the sort of getting the points but not putting the performances maybe caught up to them, and they sort of looked vulnerable. But then all of a sudden they got a win versus Chelsea in the Cup. They beat City, they beat Arsenal, they beat Forest. And you can see confidence in the players, because obviously they lost to Chelsea in the league, but they beat Chelsea in the Cup. Manchester City, big win. Not big win. They drew to City, sorry, but they put in an absolute performance versus City. The second half dominated it. Arsenal, big win. Forest, big win. Forest, 3rd place at that time of that game. Forest have been incredible. They've been putting in some real good performances. They've been putting some real good performances against the top sides, and that brought confidence back in the players, how they can compete with the top side because they're athletically brilliant. I think Newcastle, I think they didn't get any investment in the summer. So I think it's really unfair if anyone is turning on Eddie Howe and is Eddie Howe out, because they're only 1 point off the top 4. They had no investment in the summer. I think Eddie Howe needs a Mbeumo type signing, maybe a Semeno, maybe an Elanga, maybe a top right centre-back, because Shaw is obviously ageing and someone to partner Botman long term. I think Newcastle are better than people think. I think Gordon's not been at his best this season, but I think there's a good player there. Lewis Hall, I think, has been really good this season, got his England call up. Isak's starting to get back onto form. Bruno G's a powerhouse. I think injuries, poor recruitment hasn't helped Eddie Howe, but I think there's a good enough manager and good enough squad there that I think Newcastle will surprise people this season. Going into Fulham, I think Fulham have been very impressive this season. Very, very impressive. They took risks in the summer. They spent like £80 million on Smith Rowe, Anderson, and Sander Berge. People can say that's risks, but that's been money well spent. Smith Rowe's been fantastic. Sander Berge has been fantastic. Anderson's been fantastic. Just spoke about him as a massive loss for Palace. And you can see Palace and you can see Fulham defensively, the improvement there. I think Anderson was such an underrated player. They lost Palhinha, was a big setback. Sander Berge has been a very good replacement. One of my favourite players at Fulham is Anthony Robinson, the left back, has been for a while. The way he can bomb up and down the flank, do a job going forward, do a job defensively. He's been really good. And Fulham actually have the third lowest XGs against, showing how tough they are to break down. Arsenal and Man City have a higher XG against than Fulham, showing how good Fulham have been defensively. There is room for improvement in attack, but I think Fulham have been pretty good. Sixth, Brighton, probably the smartest and the best run club in the Premier League. The fact that they seem to, for 3-4 seasons in a row, really keep up with that top six. Obviously, last year they were really impacted by injuries. Is crazy with changing of managers as well. You know, what a well-run club, what a well-run unit. But they consistently seem to lose key players each summer, but they always manage to bounce back even after injury struggles. Now, my standout has been Belieber in recent games. Absolutely changed the game versus Manchester City. Absolute monster of a player. And I think signing players like Matt O'Reilly and Matt Sweefer, two really good midfielders there as well. Two midfielders I would have liked at United, to be honest. I've always rated them from what I've seen of them. You know, the midfield competition is tough, and Belieber's really coming through this season and making a point in the young 20-year-old. I think he was the long-term Casado replacement, but he was young and needed some time to get going. I think Ferde, Minter, Ruta, all been excellent recruitment choices. The guy from Germany I've not been super impressed with yet, but we'll see a bit more of him later on. I think their squad and the talent they have is really good. What they do is they make sure they sign players that are technically good and athletically good. So no matter who the coach is, they've got the profiles of players to set up a really good side. João Pedro, obviously a baller, a player that I rate massively, player that I said in the summer I'd like at United as a second striker, support Højlund because he can play deeper and could play with Højlund, but it was probably going to be out of budget. Welbeck been good. They've taken points off nearly all the big teams to set Liverpool, caused Arsenal issues, caused City issues, caused United issues. You know, they know how to cause the big boys issues. I think obviously Chelsea did beat them. And yeah, I think Mitoma's obviously another top player they have. They play an attacking fluid style, could improve defensively, but very good side. Fifth, Nottingham Forest, probably the biggest surprise of the season. Who would have thought they'd be fifth? I mean, they were third at one point. They invested heavily in the past, not so much last season, but the seasons before they've invested heavily and massively underperformed that maybe it's finally catching up to them. But Callum Hudson-Odoi probably been their smartest signing. Was it 3 million? Really good player. Murillo was a left centre-back that was linked with a lot of clubs, Tottenham, Arsenal, United at points in the summer, even Chelsea. He's showing why he was linked with a lot of top clubs. What a centre-back, I think he'll get a big move in the summer. Him and Milenkovic have been fantastic in defence. Their defensive performances have been great, even Einar. Only Liverpool have a lower XG conceded than them, which shows how good they've been defensively. But they've also good in attack. You know, Elanga brings excitement. Chris Wood keeps scoring goals. You know, Nuno's doing a good job. They've got good players like Gibbs White. I think Forest have been unbelievable. Going into Arsenal. Now, Arsenal have not been at their best, but I believe they'll bounce out. I don't think Arsenal are at the title race yet. I really don't. I'm going to be honest. Every time they drop points, bar the Newcastle and Chelsea game, it has been due to them playing with 10 men. I think it's happened 3 times now this season. And they need to be a bit more sensible with that. But I do think 1 or 2 of the red cards were a bit harsh. And it has impacted them. I think when you look at the red cards, when you look at the fixtures they've had, I think Arsenal have had the hardest 11 opening fixtures. And I think they've obviously Wolves, to be fair, as well. But I think obviously Wolves aren't in a tight race. And I think they've been okay, but they've been nowhere near their best. They've looked better than Man City this season, I'll tell you that. I think Odegaard's return will be a big boost. I will say this, Arsenal had a dip, was it December time last year or maybe January time last year, where everyone wrote them off. Everyone said they were out the title race, and then they went on that run where they were winning like games 5-6-0 and went literally and didn't lose a single Premier League game from a point to the end of the season, apart from Villa. So I actually think that this is Arsenal's dip and they're going to bounce back strong and go on a run, which means if Liverpool and City continue to drop points, Arsenal will more than catch them. I think they've had the toughest fixtures so far, but they need to improve going forward. Trossard is good off the bench, but doesn't seem to do much when he starts. Saka and Havertz seem the only attackers that are consistent goal threats. Martinelli does look a lot better when Calafiori and Marino play with him and the environment's there, but he does need to step up. They need to maybe look at another winger or an attacker. I think Timber's really impressed me. I like Calafiori. I think he's a great player. If he's fit, I think the left side improves, and I think Marino's got a lot to bring. I think Arsenal can do better. I think Declan Rice hasn't been at his very best, but I think he's a 6, not an 8, if I'm going to be honest. Chelsea. Now, Chelsea are third, but visually, on the eye, they've been the second best team to watch after Liverpool in terms of the football they play. I wouldn't say most exciting, maybe that was the wrong word to use, but I think Liverpool are top, and Liverpool deserves to be top, because if I look at the football Liverpool have played compared to City and Arsenal, Liverpool have been better. I think Chelsea have played better football than City and Arsenal this season, and I think if I was a Chelsea fan, I'd be very happy with the football I've seen. It's not perfect, they're defensively vulnerable, they do need to improve in defence, but I do think that Chelsea have played some good football. They deserve to be where they are, and I think if they continue this way, they can comfortably finish in the top 4. They've also got ridiculous depth, because they've got basically a whole different squad for the Conference League as well, and players that are hungry and ready to play in the Premier League. Now, despite losing to Liverpool and City, I felt they put up a strong fight and they were not easily beaten by those sides. What I've noticed is rather than Chelsea being rolled over and losing 3-0 to a top side, they're going there, they might be losing, but they're almost doing enough to win that game, showing they've definitely closed the gap. I think securing a draw at Arsenal is another insight of them closing a gap. They didn't lose 5-0 this year. Improvement there. They're improving defensively. Casado's been my standout. He's been a powerhouse this season. Colwell and Jackson have also impressed me. Obviously, we don't need to talk about Cole Palmer. He's a standout talent. He's an unbelievable player, one of the best players in the world. And then Neto, I think, started to show improvement and has impressed me in recent games for Chelsea. Question marks over some of the signings like Kieran Dewsbury-Hall. What was the point in the signing? How's Maresca going to further utilise the squad and the depth and the amount of players he has? There is question marks there. But I think, for the most part, Chelsea have looked good going forward. They need to improve defensively. They do look like conceding a couple defensively. They don't look like they're guaranteed a clean sheet. That's where they need to improve. I think Lavia definitely does well defensively, and him and Casado as a pivot maybe works, but better together. But I find when Enzo plays with Casado in the pivot, I think you see a better Cole Palmer, because Enzo sort of creates space and you see a bit more creativity going on at Chelsea. Going into Manchester City, who have lost 4 games in a row. To put that into context, Ten Hag's never lost 4 games in a row. And Ten Hag only lost 1 of his last 4 games and got sacked. But, no, I'm only doing that to wind up City fans. City have been nowhere near the best. 4 losses in a row is quite mad, but it's been coming. I saw a lot of people getting annoyed. I think it was Arsenal fans going, "Oh, City, they keep winning. Oh, we're never going to catch them." And I said to them, City will drop points. It's coming. After Wolves, I said it's coming. They weren't that great versus Fulham. They weren't convincing versus Southampton, I'll tell you that. They really weren't good versus Wolves. It has been coming. They've not been at it. Haaland, and I saw a statistic actually of like XG this season. Haaland's XG is like 10 times more than any other player this season. It seems it's get the ball to Haaland and he's going to score. And if Haaland doesn't score, I feel like there's less of a game plan there at City. I feel like no player's really been a goal-scoring threat other than Haaland. De Bruyne's obviously had injuries and is ageing. I don't think Bernardo Silva's been very good this season. I do really like players like Rico Lewis, a really promising young player. I think John Stones, when fit, as well. He just can't seem to stay fit. I think City, they've got the quality, they've got Pep. The thing is with City is everyone might start to write them off and then they can win 20 games in a row. Man City, and they've done this a couple of times before, but they don't look quite at it the first few months of the season. Everyone starts to go, "Oh, this is Liverpool's year, this is Arsenal's year." You know, Arsenal 2 seasons ago thought they were going to win the league. They had a 7 or 8 point gap. City, and Liverpool at times have been top at Christmas. City have won the league 4 times in a row. They know how to win the league. They've got the players that are capable of winning the league. The way I would say it with City is they could be 8 points behind at Christmas, but they could win every game from Christmas to the end of the season and win the league. It's almost like when Christmas comes around, City then go on a run where they almost win every game. You got to remember that. So while they haven't been at their best, and I think it's coming, and the dropping points are coming, and if they look poor, what City do? You know, we know that Foden's a better player than what we're seeing. We know that Haaland is more clinical than what we've seen in recent games. I think Rodri's injury is clearly having a massive impact. I wouldn't be shocked if they spent in January. I think Kovacic and Nunez are showing improvement this season, but there is rumours of falls out with Pep and tensions with Pep, and I think the 115 charge is looming in the background. It doesn't help City. I quite like Savinho. I think he's quite exciting, but I think they need a bit more on their wings. I do. I think they need a bit more flair. I don't know what it is. But let's talk about Liverpool. And you know what? The most annoying thing about this City downfall is I can't fully enjoy City dropping points because I'm like, oh, but then this benefits Liverpool. The only good thing about City dropping points is I think it'll make the title race more exciting, because I don't think Arsenal are out the title race. And I think as much as I don't like Arsenal, I almost don't want them to be fully out the title race yet, because I don't want it to be a City-Liverpool title race to the end. Do you get what I'm saying? As a United fan, could think of nothing worse. But I think, Slot has done an incredible job, especially without any major signings. What a job he's done. Gravenberch's looking like a completely different player. Best midfielder in the Premier League this season. Probably closely followed by Caicedo. Kulusevski, Palmer have also been really good as well. Yeah, Gravenberch has been fantastic. Arne Slot recognised him, his traits, his attributes, said this guy can be a 6. Gravenberch, wow. The Slot's come in, and obviously, look, Slot had similarities to Klopp. That's why Liverpool brought them in. Liverpool also obviously have done some really good recruitment in recent years. There's some good players there, but to come in and get a side to play that good so quickly, you've got to give it to Slot. And as well, there's a lot of games where Liverpool might not have the best first half, but they come out in the second half a different side, because Slot can read other managers' tactics so well. He knows what's working here, he knows what's not working. If something isn't working, he's not going to stick with it and hope it works in the second half and be stubborn, like a lot of managers do. He changes at half time and he wins games for Liverpool. I mean, Diaz and Gakpo are performing well. Obviously, Gakpo we didn't see very early on in the season, but he's doing really well. I think Anthony Gordon, you can see, he's probably not needed when they've got 2 top players fighting out on the left. I do think they might want to, because they lost Matip, and I think Robertson's injuries and age and all of that in his decline. I think they need someone at the left back, left centre back role, potentially a hybrid that could play left back and left centre back, like Schlotterbeck. You could look at those type players. I always suggested Levi Colwill, although I don't like the idea of him at left back, and I think now that he's doing well at Chelsea, he won't move. But look, defensive midfield positions as well. I think Gravenberch's done really well there, but I think Subamende coming in, pushing Gravenberch back to 8, and then you've got McAllister, Jones, Elliott, Szoboszlai can fight out for 10. I think Liverpool, if they got a DM, they'd be in a very good position. And potentially forward, you could think right wing to push Salah, but Salah's been so good. Sorry, I just had a drink of water. My throat just clogged up. I couldn't say Salah, just completely clogged up there. But Salah's been so good. I think Nunez has improved. I think Nunez has looked better in recent games. I think his pressing is good, his work rate's good. But I do think if they went big on a number 9, I know they've got Joshua Nunez, but I think if they went big on a number 9, I mean, if they went Subamende and they got like Lukuba or Schlotterbeck, someone, I think they'd be real, hard to catch with City and Arsenal. I think Liverpool can win the league. It's just that I remember last year it was Liverpool, City, Arsenal, and I think Arsenal and City just having a tiny bit more quality in their squad showed towards the back end. And I think a few players dropped off. I think AFCON, Asia Cup doesn't help as well. Obviously, no breakups this season. But yeah, I thought Curtis Jones in recent games has stepped up, done really well. I think McAllister, who was Liverpool's best player last season, I think Curtis Jones has impressed me more this season and starting to show him up a bit. I think Harvey Elliott's return could be really beneficial. I think there's a good player there, and I think he's made to play a 10 role, which didn't fully suit Klopp, but Slot likes a 10 and he could work better under Slot. And I think the defence has been outstanding. Konate and Virgil van Dijk, they're just beasts. Like, I've spoke about it before. If you've watched my other videos, you know what I've said on Konate and Van Dijk. They're beasts, they're monsters. You can't beat them. Salah's unreal. And yeah, sadly, Liverpool could win the league. It's still very early days, but I think Liverpool, seeing how Arsenal City are playing, not just dropping points, but the fact that they're also playing better than Arsenal City, it's positive signs for Liverpool, but there's a long way to go. There's a January window. Injuries can happen. Have to wait and see. Thank you for watching. Bye.